Here's the trap that we as DMs and homebrew designers often fall into. We think good encounters are about balance, or challenge, or stats. And yes, those are important, but that's only half the story. The secret to incredible monster and encounter design, it's this. This represents the monster's identity, its core fantasy. When we ignore this, monsters lose their magic. They're reduced to just numbers. But when you embrace their core fantasy, embrace the essence of what makes them terrifying, wondrous, or even tragic, they become unforgettable. They elevate your encounters and your entire campaign. Take these little guys, kobolds, goblins, orcs. Low-level monsters we've all seen 100 times. And yeah, they can start to feel the same. Why? Because their core fantasy often gets lost. Without it, they're just filler enemies. But monsters in D&D and other TTRPGs, usually they come with incredible lore, abilities, goals, and tendencies. When we lean into that, every monster, no matter how common, can feel distinct. It's all about tapping into what makes them special, and letting that guide how you design your encounters. But here's the big question. What is a core fantasy, really? How do you figure it out, and how do you use it? Let's start with this. What do you imagine when you think of a mind flayer? Is it the terrifying intellect, the hunger for brains, or maybe the chilling realization that it's always 2 steps ahead of you? Now what about a dragon? Overwhelming power, greed that knows no bounds, the majesty of an apex predator that can shape entire kingdoms. These are the core fantasies of these monsters. They're the themes, emotions, and ideas that define them. It's the story they're telling before anyone rolls initiative. To get a little more definitive, the core fantasy of a monster refers to its essential characteristics, the qualities that make it distinct and recognizable. It encompasses a monster's behavior, lore, role in the game's ecology, its core ideas and themes, and the feelings it inspires in players when they encounter it. A monster's core fantasy is defined by both narrative and mechanical elements, and it shapes how the creatures fit into the world and interacts with adventurers. You can get a good sense of a monster's core fantasy by asking these questions. First, think about its motivation. What does this creature want? Why does it act the way it does? For example, take the Mind Flayer. It's driven by an insatiable hunger for brains and the need to reproduce by seeding other creatures with their tadpoles. That's not just a creepy feature of these guys, it's a huge part of what makes Mind Flayers memorable. Their motivation is central to their identity. Does the monster want something personal like vengeance or survival? Is it following its instincts like a hungry predator or territorial beast? Or does it have a larger purpose like serving a god, fulfilling a prophecy, or waging war on an enemy? These motivations give you a framework for why the monster is there and how it will react to the party. Next, ask yourself, what role does this creature play in the world? This is where the monster's identity comes into sharp focus. Is it a solitary hunter, a pack leader, or part of a larger ecosystem? Does it have allies or minions? What's its relationship to other creatures in the area? Is it tied to the land itself, like a dragon ruling over its lair, or does it roam, leaving chaos in its wake? For instance, a dragon isn't just a big lizard with wings. It's a force of nature, deeply tied to the land it rules. Even a kobold, the smallest and weakest of monsters, has a role in the world. It thrives in groups, creating clever traps and ambushes to overcome its physical frailty. By asking questions about the monster's role, you unlock what makes them feel like a living part of your world. Once you know what motivates your monster and its role in the world, think about how it behaves. Does it strike fear through intimidation, or does it use subtlety and cunning? Is it reckless, charging into battle, or cautious, preferring to manipulate events from the shadows? How does it view the adventurers? Are they prey, enemies, tools, or something else entirely? A beholder is a floating eye monster that has striking visuals and abilities, but what makes it iconic is that it's a paranoid tyrant that dominates its lair and twists everything around it to serve its warped vision. A vampire is a fast and strong undead that's hard to take out, but what makes it special is that it's also a manipulator that toys with its victims emotionally, before going in for the kill. Finally, consider the monster's mythology. In your world, what does this creature symbolize? Is it a god's punishment, an embodiment of fear, or a relic of a forgotten age? How do people in your world view it? Do they tell tales about it around the fire? Are there superstitions, myths, or rituals tied to it? What does the monster represent on a thematic level? Greed, corruption, nature's wrath, or something else? And I want to emphasize that, theming. How you describe a monster, and what monsters you choose in a given encounter can go a long way to set the theme and mood of your session and overall campaign. And when you answer these questions, you're creating an experience, something that lingers with your players long after the dice stop rolling. But why does any of this matter? Why should you try to capture the core fantasy of your monsters? Sometimes you just need to have orcs attack, or you're really busy and you know the skeleton stat block very well, so you throw a handful of skeleton at the party for tonight's encounter. And that's fine. It does take extra effort to consider these questions for your monsters, but I think it's worth it. Why is that? Let me ask you something. Why do we play TTRPGs? Is it to run through stat blocks and mechanics? Or is it because we want to be part of the stories, moments that feel alive, just as real in our imaginations as our everyday, to immerse ourselves in worlds where monsters are more than numbers on a page? This is where a monster's core fantasy becomes crucial. It's a useful design tool that you can use to inform your decisions both during design and prep. There are 100 monsters you can throw at the party at any given time. And thinking of the themes and goals and kind of story you are telling, it can help you very quickly narrow down what monster to bring to a given encounter. But it's not just that, not just a design tool. It's how we turn encounters into the stories that keep players coming back to the table. Understanding a monster's core fantasy connects directly to that purpose. Think about it. What makes an encounter stick in your players' minds? It's not just how much damage they dealt or how close they came to dying. It's the feeling the encounter gave them. When a monster leans into core fantasy, it creates a unique and unforgettable experience. Like the time your players faced a regenerating troll and realized mid-battle that only fire or acid could stop it. Or the chilling moment a vampire charmed their ally and used them as a pawn. Compare that to a fight where the troll is just a big bag of hit points, or the vampire is just another melee fighter. These encounters fade into the background, but when a monster's core fantasy comes to life, your players walk away saying, "Remember that time we fought?" Monsters, especially those within D&D, come with built-in tropes and expectations, and that's a good thing. Tropes are storytelling shortcuts. They're the things your players already know and understand about a creature, and they help set the tone for your encounters. A dragon should feel powerful and majestic. A mind flayer should feel eerie and overwhelming. A pack of gnolls should feel like feral, relentless hunters. If your monster doesn't match its core fantasy, those expectations, you risk breaking that immersion. Imagine fighting a dragon that's timid and weak, or encountering a lone kobold that hits like a raging barbarian. Now, I'm not saying that you can't subvert expectations. The swollbold is a thing for a reason, but we'll get to that later. For now, just remember, delivering on a monster's core fantasy reinforces immersion and draws your players deeper into the world. And here's the real magic. Designing with a monster's identity in mind transforms an encounter into a story. A fight with a troll is about survival, adaptation, and fire. A run-in with a dragon is about overcoming impossible odds, earning glory, or even negotiating with a creature that could destroy you in an instant. When a monster's identity shines, every encounter becomes a narrative moment. The fight itself reveals something about the world, the stakes, or even the characters. And when your encounters tell stories, your campaign becomes richer, deeper, and more engaging. Without a monster's core fantasy, you're just rolling dice in a combat. With it, you're creating memories and telling stories. So now we understand why this matters. It's about creating moments your players will never forget, delivering on tropes and immersion, and transforming combat into storytelling. But how do we avoid the pitfalls that can derail a monster's core fantasy? Imagine this. Your players have been trekking across a scorching desert for days. Heat shimmers on the horizon, and suddenly, an adult white dragon swoops down from the sky. Now, this might be surprising, even shocking, but the problem is it doesn't match what your players expect from a white dragon. White dragons are creatures of cold and ice. They embody the brutal, unrelenting power of winter, with lairs in frozen tundras or icy caves. Putting one in a desert without a solid explanation robs it of its identity. Sure, it might work as a plot hook, if done intentionally. Maybe the dragon is here because of a powerful artifact that's keeping it away from home and in the heat. But if you just drop a white dragon in the desert without context, it feels dissonant. It breaks immersion and makes the encounter feel random instead of meaningful. Now, don't get me wrong, subverting expectations can be amazing, but only if it's done intentionally and with care. Great stories often deliver on their foreshadowing. When you set up a monster's identity, you're building anticipation. Your players might expect a troll to regenerate, a vampire to charm, or a green dragon to manipulate from behind the scenes. These expectations create tension because players are thinking, how do we deal with this? But when you subvert expectations just for the sake of surprise, you risk undermining the entire story. Subversion works best when it builds on what the players already know, rather than discarding it. Another pitfall is making monsters too generic. When you ignore a monster's core identity, it becomes just another stat block. An encounter with a kobold that doesn't use traps or teamwork? It's just a worse goblin. A mind flayer that doesn't use psychic abilities or thralls? It's just a humanoid mage with a tentacle face. The magic of monsters lies in their unique traits. If you strip that away, you lose what makes them special, and your players lose the sense of wonder and tension that those traits create. So, how do we avoid these traps? It's simple. Always tie your encounters back to the monster's core fantasy. If you're going to put a white dragon in the desert, make sure the environment reinforces its identity. Maybe its lair is encased in magical ice that's slowly melting, and the dragon is becoming desperate. If you're tweaking a monster, make sure the changes still enhance its core fantasy. For instance, a vampire that's lost its charm ability might rely on psychological manipulation instead, playing into its cunning and cruelty. Remember, the goal isn't to surprise your players, it's to immerse them. Deliver on their expectations and then layer in twists that enhance the story. That's how you create encounters they'll talk about long after the session ends. Now that we've seen what not to do, let's talk about how to do it right. How can you design encounters that not only honor a monster's identity, but highlight it? The first step is to ask, what makes this monster unique? What's their calling card? Take the Beholder, for example. Its core fantasy is crystal clear. It's an all-seeing, paranoid tyrant with a devastating arsenal of magical eye rays. Fighting one is a nightmare of dodging disintegrations, charms, and petrifications, all while staying out of its anti-magic cone. That's its identity. It's an overwhelming multi-dimensional challenge that forces your players to think fast and adapt. Now think about your monster. What's its unique hook? Is it a vampire's charm and manipulation? A mind flayer's psychic domination? A boulette's sudden, devastating ambush from underground? Is it a banshee's haunting wail and spectral dread? Ask yourself, if you stripped everything else away, what would this monster need to keep its core identity intact? Next, design the encounter so it plays to the monster's strengths. Think about what makes this monster tick, and how you can use that to challenge your players. For example, a group of kobolds is about cleverness. You're not throwing them into a head-on fight, you're setting up ambushes, traps, and hit and runs. Or let's take a boulette. Its entire fantasy is surprise and devastation. Don't have it lumber into the fight. Make it erupt from the ground beneath the party mid-conversation, sending shockwaves through the area. It forces players to react fast or get devoured. Highlighting a monster's fantasy isn't about making it harder, it's about making it more interesting. The encounter should feel like it's about the monster, not just a random fight. The environment is one of your best tools for reinforcing a monster's identity. Think of it as the stage where the encounter takes place. For a beholder, you want verticality and unpredictability, caverns with high ceilings, narrow ledges, and pockets of darkness where it can float unseen. Maybe a ledge crumbles under a player, dropping them into the path of its anti-magic cone. The environment turns the fight into a 3-dimensional puzzle. For a Hydra, its regeneration comes not from magic, but from its terrifying biology. Cut off one head, and 2 grow back in its place. Imagine the fight taking place in a swamp. Murky water hides its movements, and the thick fog limits visibility. The players might think they're safe when they lop off a head, only to hear the squelch of 2 more rising from its neck. The swamp is flavor, but it also becomes a hazard where fire, the only way to stop the regeneration, becomes hard to use. This makes regeneration not just a mechanic, but part of the story. A problem to solve in the middle of a fight where the environment works against you. For a Remoraz, the core threat is not only its bite, but also the heat that emanates from its body. In a frozen tundra or icy cavern setting, whenever the Remoraz is injured, the heat causes the surrounding ice to melt, converting solid ground into slush or water. This change can complicate the situation for players, as the environment becomes unstable while the creature moves through the softened terrain. In this way, the Remoraz's heat and the shifting environment become an integral part of the regeneration. It forces the players to adapt their tactics and manage both the monster and the battlefield. Designing the environment to suit the monster makes the encounter feel more immersive and keeps the players thinking on their feet. Finally, remember that a great encounter isn't just about the mechanics, it's about the story. Every monster has a reason for being there. Why is this owlbear rampaging through the forest? Maybe its cub was taken by poachers, and it's desperately searching for them. What about the wraith haunting the ruins? Perhaps it's the spirit of a betrayed knight, bound to guard a cursed treasure until their oath is fulfilled. Even a quick one-off encounter becomes richer when you add a touch of narrative. Your players start to see the monsters as part of the world, not just obstacles to overcome. Give your monsters motivations, ties to the world, and stakes that matter. The encounter then becomes a story your players can interact with. So to design encounters with core fantasy in mind, start with the monster's identity. Every monster in D&D comes with a rich backstory. Use it. The Monster Manual, Volo's Guide to Monsters, or even third-party supplements are gold mines for understanding a monster's identity. Lean into what makes the monster special. Build encounters that play to their strengths. Use the environment to reinforce the story. Always ask, how does the environment support the monster? An ice dragon in a frozen wasteland feels like a natural extension of its identity. A fight with kobolds in a trapped warren is way more dynamic than fighting them in an open field. Think of the themes your monster represents. Is it fear, corruption, greed? Let those themes bleed into the encounter design. A vampire encounter should feel like a slow, creeping horror, not just a fight with a bitey guy in a cape. And add narrative context to bring them to life. Do this, and your encounters will go from functional to unforgettable. But don't forget, and I want to emphasize this, make it your own. This is a big one. Don't feel trapped by the default lore or abilities, make monsters your own. Maybe your kobolds worship a god of chaos and are more like wild sorcerers. Maybe your troll was cursed to regenerate as punishment for some ancient crime. As long as the monster stays true to its core fantasy, you have the freedom to put your own spin on it, or create a new core fantasy entirely. Every monster should feel distinct, whether it's a simple goblin or a mighty dragon. Lean into their core fantasy, design encounters to highlight their uniqueness, and make them a part of the story you're telling. When you do that, your players will walk away with stories they'll tell for years. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz, and tell me about your favorite monster or monster encounter in the comments section below.